yes, anding obviously being a rule in improv comedy, which is what we're doing here today.
Yeah. It's like the rule of threes. Comedy always works in threes.
Oh, it's like the rule of two because of the Sith. Speaking of the Sith, I have been, speaking of the Sith as a joke.
Oh. I got real excited there for a second.
I don't know. Do you fuck with audiobooks very often?
Okay. You know what's funny is that as much as I listen to podcasts, because I do a lot.
Only hours, though. It's important to note. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. And I've been listening to podcasts, only ours, for like a decade.
Yeah, long time. Yeah.
But I don't really do audiobooks. I don't know what the difference is there.
So I didn't have a huge interest in podcasts. And I still don't, if I'm being completely honest. We may lose fans over this, but I prefer to be completely integral than to lie to our audience. I don't like podcasts.
Okay.
There have been like two that either you have introduced me to or, like that I have found because I really like Macaulay Culkin. But there have been a couple podcasts that I fart around in and kind of experience, but I don't really go after them. So I used to work for people in the area that we are in that we know. We live adjacent to the city of Tampa, and I used to work in downtown Clearwater. So it was 36 miles to, and then another 36 from. I was in my car for about 10 hours a week.
Yeah, gotta get across that bridge.
It was a fucking nightmare. I did that job. I made that drive for years. And then the only silver lining that came of COVID is my company was like, okay, remote only from now on, which is great. Apparently weirdly modern. Like a lot of companies still haven't gotten there. But with the audiobooks, it necessitated entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And podcasts never really interested me. So I started with Harry Potter. You and I both like those books. We both like those movies. I started with, we don't fucking like the author, but we like the books. But reading, I'm doing air quotes.
No, but I think that constitutes reading.
Yeah. Going through.
Who was which version did you get?
Not Stephen Fry, did Jim Dale.
Okay.
Because it wasn't by choice. It was what they had on Audible, but Jim Dale was fantastic. By the end of it, it's like, because as a child, I had listened to parts of Harry Potter audiobooks with Stephen Fry, who's amazing, but I prefer the Jim Dale version. If you have the choice, that's what I recommend. But so Andy Serkis has recorded audiobooks of the entire Fellowship of the Ring trilogy. He may have done The Hobbit as well. I don't know. Probably, if I had to guess. But he's at least done the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So now that I work from home to kind of have background noise and entertainment, I still listen to audiobooks. But now I'm doing Lord of the Rings. And I'm almost done. There's a crazy thing that happens in the Lord of the Rings that I don't know if you know about. And I really wanted to tell you while we recorded so I could see if this is crazy to you like it is to me.
Okay.
Towards the end, the Fellowship and the hobbits of the Fellowship return to the Shire. And they find out that the town has been taken over. The Shire's been taken over. And it's awful. There's like poverty and corruption and murder. And it's become like a slum. And it's happened because Lotho of Bag End has been paid off by some guy named Sharky, is all they call him. Okay. Sharky, right? It's a silly name, right? Like a gang leader. And you expect it to be like a hobbit with like a curly mustache and like a gold tooth. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
And so you kind of keep going. And then you find out that Sharky is the nickname of Saruman.
What?
That after the fall of Isengard, Saruman escapes defeated. He escapes. He goes to the Shire and he's like, man, I'm gonna make some fucking money. He goes by Sharky and he takes over the Shire as like a crime lord. And so it put something. Now we talked about in last week's episode, we minorly talked about Magic the Gathering. Which we do not play.
Do not play.
Hashtag no Magic the Gathering. But we don't play it. And I mentioned that there had been references to Chucky. Well, there's a whole Lord of the Rings set that was printed. And I opened a pack of those cards that I was gifted. And one of the cards was Sharky
Really?
It's like Sharky, like Sharky Shire crime lord or something. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like an old man hunched over, sitting in a hobbit hole, surrounded by like greasy looking like criminal hobbits. And I was like, what the fuck is this a reference to? So then I get there and I put it together and I'm like, oh my God, that's Saruman. Because that's like my favorite character. Because I love Christopher Lee. I'm a big fan of a good villain. And Saruman's interesting because he works for Sauron, but they call him the Faithless because they're using each other. And it's just so compelling just to find out that he's like, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to destroy the lives of the sweetest little creatures ever, and they can never have food or happiness ever again. Hello, and welcome back to the Third Channel Podcast,
where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan
and a newbie to the genre. I'm PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And today, the only thing we're here to talk about is horror. Today's garden variety horror comes in the fashion of Child's Play 3. No subtitles to these.
Yeah.
Just Child's Play 3.
Quick question. Did you say hello 3 times at the top because it's Child's Play 3?
Yeah.
That's good.
I said it 3 times for 2 reasons. Number 1, I said it 3 times because it's Child's Play 3. And number 2, Beetlejuice is actually based off of a Sumerian monster called Hello. And if you say Hello's name 3 times, he pops up and he punches you right in the testiculars.
Truly caught me off guard with that one.
Yeah, it's because it's nonsense. We are something about the number 3 with these movies. Army of Darkness excluded. Army of Darkness is really, I think, where that franchise takes off. But yeah, Scream 3 was an episode that we got to, and you know, we had built up momentum with, you know, introducing ourselves in our episode 0. We come in strong with one of the better movies of all time, Scream, and then its sequel, which is still pretty good. And then we hit number 3, and it's like, well, we're going to lose a little bit of steam here. This one, we might lose just a little bit more steam than we might have with Scream 3. I would say Scream 3 of franchises is probably a stronger film than I don't think that's controversial to say that Scream 3 is better than Child's Play 3.
Yeah, probably not. I will say right off the bat that because I think we even made a comment about it probably in the last 2 episodes, that I wasn't really looking forward to these rewatches.
Definitely not.
But that being said, I actually enjoyed Child's Play 3 a lot more this go round, than I did my first time.
I think the reason that is because I said the same thing to you because we watched this movie, I think, twice over the course of this week together, which is a rarity. Typically, we only watch it. With our schedules, we only get to watch it together really the once, but we got through twice this week. And I said the same thing. I enjoyed watching it more. And I think the reason, because I've really been like soul searching, because it's like, do I just hate everything the first time and then like it the second time? Because that's a character flaw. So I was trying to rationalize not having any of those because I'm, you know, my mom says I'm perfect. And what I came up with, and I think this holds water, is when watching it chronologically, because you haven't seen these movies before and you're watching it for the tale of Chucky, this movie does not do very well. Because it's very much a Goku gets his driver's license filler episode of Dragon Ball, where in the Chucky universe. Yeah. Doesn't do much for any of the characters involved. It's kind of, I have said this on the show before, and I will say it every time it's relevant because I stand by this. This is what I want on my tombstone. The worst thing a horror movie can be is boring. And this one's a little boring. It just, there are scenes where it's just like, please. But we have the benefit of rewatching, and the rewatch for us is academic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're rewatching it to point out things in the movie that you may not have noticed the first time, or details that you don't typically take in or imbibe with the first watch through, you can enjoy it more because you're not looking at it as part of an entire movie series. You're looking at it just the one.
Mm-hmm.
And as the single movie, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's dumb fun is what this one is.
Yeah. It's crazy absurd. It makes almost no sense, even in the context of the rules of the. Well, no, I guess it makes sense within the context of the rules,
Okay.
but it makes no sense as to why any of it has to take place at military school.
Yeah, that's where it does become an odd choice.
I think that's everybody's complaint that doesn't love this movie is like this. The plot is fine. It's serviceable. It's an A, B, and a C. Why does that have to happen there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree there.
No.
I'm not saying it's, earth-shatteringly good.
No.
It's still probably the weakest point. It's definitely the weakest point so far in this franchise that we've covered.
Yeah. This is probably one of the weaker movies that we've covered. Period.
Yeah, for sure. But I think I don't think it's the worst overall, and maybe my opinion will change once we get through Cult and Curse again.
Yes.
Because I've only watched any of these movies once before these rewatches for this show.
The only exception to that is I have seen, because Bride of Chucky is Carly's one of her favorite all-time movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then Seed of Chucky is one of Alistair's favorite all-time movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen those a lot.
Yeah.
But the others, why bother?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do, and we'll get to, whether we recommend things and at the end, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there off the top this isn't my favorite, but I didn't hate this experience of rewatching it like I thought that I would.
Yeah.
I also didn't remember a whole lot from this at all.
Almost nothing.
Yeah.
I usually have some sort of recollection. A lot of these we watched a year plus ago, and a lot of these, because the whole point is that I only ever saw it the one time, and a lot of them we were watching very late, and it was like we're watching one movie back to back to back to back 5 days out of the week. So some of them would kind of like, people say that Albert Einstein forgot how to tie his shoes because he learned quantum whatever. It's the same with, I'm basically Albert Einstein. I would watch, I'd watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then, Child's Play 3 would just leach out of my head.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine.
Yeah, one pushes the other right out.
I think that if you have to give up the memory of Child's Play 3 for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I do think that's fine.
Oh, that's worth it for sure. How do we want to begin?
I think this episode we can just dive right in. I don't have any housekeeping.
Same.
Except the same every week. Please tell other people about this show. Please submit your feelings and thoughts about our show to us. My mom used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's not what I'm going to say here. Bully us. We love it.
Yeah. I would say, I don't think I've seen any reviews out there written, but I know that helps people out. So if you want to go ahead and review us on any podcasting apps that you listen, hopefully we're a 5-star podcast. If not, I don't want to hear from you.
We like Dennis Reynolds, are 5-star men.
Yes.
That is a quote from Always Sunny, and it is the only one I'll ever do on this show, unless I already have, and I probably will again. I think with that, we can move into the discussion, which we begin with the IMDb summary. I didn't read this. I've decided I'm not reading them before.
You're going to cold read them?
Yeah. So I'm experiencing this along with you and our listeners. I was going to say readers. We're not smart. We don't have people that read on this show. Chucky returns for revenge against Andy, the young boy who defeated him, and now a teenager living in a military academy.
Basic?
Yeah, I guess. It's weird that Andy defeated him. No mention of Kyle at all, which I guess that makes sense.
We get no mention of Kyle in this movie at all.
Well, yeah. Kyle wasn't real.
What?
Yeah, Kyle was the friends Andy made along the way, which were the Simpsons, who both died horrifically because Andy killed them.
Wait, what?
Chucky isn't alive.
Is that what you think is going on in these movies?
I didn't rewatch them.
You believe he was in court,
right,
for all the murders that happened in the first movie, and you were like, well, yeah, obviously this is a crazy kid.
Here's the thing. I haven't rewatched any of these. I have been very lucky at guessing along with you in all of these discussions, like with Alistair in Child's Play and now with you in Child's Play 2, just the two of us. I've just guessed my way through. I've been very lucky. I've now been unlucky and have been found out.
Oh, so man. People are going to hold you accountable. Child's Play 3 released August 30th of 1991. A short 9 months after the release of Child's Play 2.
Yeah.
They rushed this thing right into production.
This movie was rushed?
Yeah.
Say it ain't so.
This movie is directed by a gentleman named Jack Bender. It's written by Don Mancini. It's produced by Robert Lathan Brown. Now, Robert Lathan Brown, if you remember, is the name of... it's a name that we heard last week. He was an executive producer on Child's Play 2, if I'm not mistaken. And because David Kirshner was busy running Hanna-Barbera at the time of the making of Child's Play 2.
Yeah, by the way, for the listener at home, when we talk about Mr. Kirshner, we're going to say things that he's done that are going to blow your fucking mind.
Yeah, if somehow this is the first one that you're listening in on. But basically so he was busy with that. So Robert Lathan Brown is the one who was kind of the producer on set, and they have switched roles this movie.
Okay.
So Kirshner's now the executive producer, and Lathan Brown is the producer on this film. The cinematography is done by a man named John R. Leonetti.
Okay.
He's worked on a lot of things. He's been DP on The Mask, Mortal Kombat, like the 90s Mortal Kombat film, The Scorpion King, Dead Silence, Piranha 3D, Insidious 1 and 2, and The Conjuring. So he's worked with James Wan on like several films.
Yeah.
And then he has directed several movies as well. He is the director of Annabelle.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Another, creepy doll movie.
I find it funny because like you mentioned The Mask, and it may just be an issue of early 90s movies look the same. But I can kind of see a hint of The Mask in Child's Play 3. Something about the way, like, it's really focused on colors in odd ways. Like, the colors that do pop out really specifically.
Yeah, because
I might just be reading into that.
I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't doubt it. Like, you start noticing a visual style that cinematographers have.
It's like the vividness of an early 90s Capri Sun commercial. It's that kind of look.
And, and it has to do with the lighting, and it has to do with, a lot of different factors. But, yeah, I just think it's interesting because he's done a lot. And, he's done more than what I listed. I was just kind of trying to find genre stuff that he's worked on. It's edited by Scott Wallace. He was an editor or an editor assistant on Airplane, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Leprechaun 3, Child's Play, and Child's Play 3. So he's done a lot of work with, oh my God, John Hughes, for all those, 80s, like high school coming of age movies.
Which this one definitely is.
Yeah. Fits right in.
Chucky finally comes of age.
And then Edward Washilka, which I'm always probably pronouncing his name wrong, but he's back as an editor, also on 16 Candles, Howard the Duck, Rambo 3, and all 3 Child's Play films.
Okay.
The budget for this movie is the same as Child's Play 2.
And you, in this moment, assume that I recall that number.
Yeah, you definitely do.
I'm going to say high or low?
In accordance to what?
In accordance to a general feeling, the vibe.
It's not high.
Okay, I'm going to guess 16.
13.
13? Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah. 16 was what Mancini said Child's Play 1 was.
Okay.
On the commentary.
So it's gone down.
Yes, they went down a little bit for this.
That happens a lot in these sequels,
but that
I'm finding.
Also is because their box office went down.
Oh, wham.
So the box office for this one is $20.5 million off a $13 million budget.
Yeah.
So like it made money, but not like a ton.
Yeah, it didn't quite clear the double it needs to make a lot. Yeah, to make
and
a
that's
profit.
Down from $36 million from Child's Play 2.
I would say that 36 million to 20 million is about the worth.
Yeah.
The monetary worth I would give these movies.
And the unfortunate thing is like that's what happened with these movies is like Child's Play made money and then Child's Play 2 made a little less and Child's Play 3 made a little less. Yeah. Whereas like I think a lot of the like the Friday the 13th films or the Nightmare on Elm Street films, those first couple, it's like the sequel makes more until it stops making more.
Scream was surprisingly more.
So director Jack Bender, he has done a lot of television work.
Yes.
So early, he's done 4 episodes for The Sopranos.
Oh, okay.
He worked on Alias, which is a J.J. Abrams show, which we mentioned talking about Cabin in the Woods. He directed 42 episodes of Lost.
Which is why in our rewatch, the second rewatch, we watched the film with Carly.
Right.
Who was our guest on Cabin in the Woods. If you haven't heard that discussion, try to, because that's a really good movie, and I think it was a good discussion.
Yeah.
But in that episode of our podcast talking about Cabin in the Woods, I talk about a show called From that stresses me out like crazy. I said in that episode it's a good show because I submit that it's a very good show, and the people that love it fucking love it.
Yeah.
I don't like that show personally because it stresses me the fuck out. And Carly knows that. And Carly thinks it's funny to put it on before bedtime. All of that to say, during our rewatch,
I was very excited for Carly to see the director's credit at the beginning of this film because I knew she would know what other things that Jack Bender had worked on.
It's funny too, because you were like, watch out for the director in the opening credits. And then Jack Bender, and you did not get a disappointing. I was like, holy shit, Jack Bender. And then of course who is that?
Yeah. Which is not a name that you would necessarily just know. But if you are obsessed with certain shows like Lost, a lot of J.J. Abrams stuff.
Yeah. He's one of the main characters in Futurama.
No.
Yeah. Bender.
No.
Yeah, laugh at that joke. That was a good one. Thank you.
It took me a second, but yeah.
That's all
right. He also did 4 episodes of Alcatraz, which was another JJ show. He's done a couple Stephen King adaptations, Under the Dome and Mr. Mercedes, 2 episodes of Game of Thrones in season 6, and then he did 14 episodes of From.
Yes.
So very excited. This is, I think, kind of early in his career, him directing this.
And what's funny is that a lot of times, we're talking about cinematography and you can kind of see the things that pattern those, that string those pieces of work together visually. Jack Bender having directed this, you could put a gun to my head, give me 100 guesses, and I would never have guessed that because the things that he directs are incredibly action heavy. Typically, they are very suspenseful. They are very, they are emotionally intense. One of the episodes of Game of Thrones that he directed is the fucking Hodor episode. He directs really good, claustrophobic, intense, emotionally exhausting pieces. And then Child's Play 3 is none of those things. 0 of those things.
Oh man, what about that third act?
With the paintball?
No. When they're at the carnival.
Still no.
Don Mancini, as we've all said, he is the writer on all the Child's Play films, the Chucky films, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Chucky's dad.
Pretty much. Producer Robert Lathan Brown, he was the production manager on John Carpenter's The Thing. He was also I'm just going to say he's the production manager on all these things I'm going to list. Return of the Jedi, Temple of Doom, Goonies, Howard the Duck. So all like Lucasfilm stuff.
Yeah.
Or Amblin. I think Goonies is actually Amblin. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So her film. He was production manager on the 3 Child's Play films, Starship Troopers, Hollow Man, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. All good things.
Back to Child's Play 3.
Yes. So Universal Studios, they basically had Don Mancini begin writing the 3rd installment before Child's Play 2 was even released.
Great.
This put a lot of pressure on him to draft a storyline in such a tight schedule, and they had set that the release date was 9 months from then.
Jesus.
So he initially wanted to introduce the concept of multiple Chuckies in this one, which I think plays pretty, like you can see where that's going to come from with the opening of this film. But due to like budget constraints, they couldn't do that. That idea was scrapped. He would later use that concept of multiple Chuckies in Cult of Chucky. Spoilers there. It was also intended to open with a scene of like a security guard frightening off a bunch of kids who were trespassing at the Good Guys factory. And they wanted John Ritter to play said security guard.
Okay.
He was going to scare them off by telling like scary stories about Chucky. But Mancini, he felt that he had kind of like run out of ideas. And so he was just really kind of stressed, I think, with the writing process.
Of course you're going to feel like you've run out of ideas when before your movie that you spent however long writing and creating has come out, they go, oh, again. It's like, yeah, it takes a lot of creativity to create to write a screenplay for an entire fucking movie. I don't know. That seems terrible. And what I will say is that having only 9 months like between to create an entire, well, even less than, but having that time constraint, knowing that does make this movie quite a bit better. It isn't a good movie,
right?
But for what they had to work with, obviously that's pretty alarmingly good, because you would expect it to be like one of the later Hellraiser sequels.
Yeah, just an absolute mess.
Yeah, and it's not. It's cohesive.
Yeah.
It's just kind of dumb.
Yeah, and it's got some good moments, and it's just it's dumb fun is what I would say it is. Basically, he had decided to make Andy 16 years old. He planned to recast the role, obviously, because having it take place and release 9 months later, it's not like Alex Vincent can age that much in that time.
Though I'll point out here that in our first rewatch of this for the podcast, I did not know that this was 9 months later.
Right.
I had no idea. And I asked you, is that Alex Vincent? Because I didn't know for certain.
No, they found a good,
it's a
kind
great
of grown likeness there.
Yeah. I think that was your comment, I think, was like, no, it's just that good of a likeness. And it really, it's so good from watching those movies day to day that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So that's good casting.
Yep. And it's just this time jump. So they have to kind of cast around that. So they were going to recast originally with Jonathan Brandis. He was an actor. He was in Stepfather 3, which is a horror film. Neverending Story 2. And then he had just come off of playing the young Bill Denbrough in the miniseries of It. Like the Tim Curry It.
Okay.
So fresh off of that, they were like, oh, we should get him.
He's not bad.
No, he wouldn't have been bad, but they hired Justin Whalen instead.
Which is probably better, because I will say that Justin Whalen is very good in this.
Yeah, he really does. I think he does a good job.
For even as ridiculous and absurd as the story that he has to act against is, and as young as he was, he it's believable the entire time.
Yeah, and the things that he's having to kind of portray of like PTSD and things like that, of childhood trauma. He, after this, he's in a John Waters film, Serial Mom. He was in the Dungeons and Dragons movie from 2000 with Jeremy Iron.
Oh my God, he fucking is.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie, so I can't speak for it.
But I've seen it. Holy shit, he is.
I think he's like is he the main character?
That one's a weird one to label that with, but yeah, that's fucking crazy.
He's in National Lampoon's Dorm Days 2 in 2006.
Do you know what's interesting about that movie? I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, neither have I.
Yeah.
I think most people haven't. And then he also played Jimmy Olsen in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, which is the TV show from the 90s starring is it Dean Cain?
Yeah.
It's one that my dad watched.
He's Jimmy Olsen?
He's Jimmy Olsen. But look at his think about his face and think, yeah, that's Jimmy Olsen.
Well, what's funny is that because he kind of reminds me the entire time, he reminds me of the kid who plays Gideon in The Righteous Gemstones facially. Like, not exclusively, but it's like he's kind of got the same kind of vibe, like the same sort of kind of personality.
Yeah.
That kid is Jimmy Olsen in the James Gunn Superman movie.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I can't wait either.
Before Jack Bender became director, Mancini had wanted to hire Peter Jackson.
What the fuck?
Which is crazy that you started this whole thing with that Lord of the Rings stuff.
Okay, no one will ever believe this. I did not know that.
No, it was, you couldn't have. he, at that point, because we know him as the guy who did Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but what's funny is that I know Peter Jackson also did that movie that's like impossible to find now, which is Dead Alive, I think is one of the titles for it.
Brain Dead, Dead Alive from 1992. So
I saw that movie at a single cell theater as part of like a weird, like, come out and spend the $3 and it gives you like a thing. The theater was dying. It was having problems. So they started doing B movies at like way late in the evening. So I went and saw it there and I got like 10 minutes into that movie. And I was like, nah, fuck this. And I walked out.
Yeah, it is one that I have never seen because it is so hard to find, but I'd love to get my hands on it. But yeah, before that, he had done a movie called Bad Taste in 87 and Meet the Feebles in 89. And then he was working on Brain Dead, Dead Alive at the time that Child's Play 3 was being made. Principal photography began in February of 1991. They shot at the Kemper Military School that's in Boonville, Missouri, because the Kent Military Academy is not a real place.
Which we looked up while watching because that was a question that we had thrown around. Okay.
Further filming took place in California. This is a Universal film. So just like the Child's Play 2, a lot of the shooting took place at Universal City, their backlots. And then the carnival scenes were shot in Valencia in California.
Okay. Yeah, that looks like California.
Yeah. And I don't know in the movie, like the context of the film itself, I don't know where it's supposed to be taking place. It's not in Chicago. We've moved away from there.
Because they send him away.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if they specify. If they did, it's a detail I didn't catch.
Yeah. It's like finding out later, years later, that Camp Crystal Lake is in fucking Jersey.
Yeah.
It's like, it is? That's not, if you were paying attention to what state Crystal Lake is in, that Friday the 13th movie sucks.
The puppeteering in this, like with all these films, it always gets better. It always improves as we go along. And this was the first time that they had used computer technology to control the mouth movements.
Yes.
And I mean, it really, really shows.
Chucky's animatronic in this movie is the best part of the movie. And I think this movie's animatronic paves the way for them later in that decade to make the next two movies. I would say that, even in the show and like Curse and Cult, as the animatronic gets better and better and better, I still submit, and we'll go way more into detail about this in the next two episodes, but like the Bride and Seed of Chucky animatronic is perfect. And it's like the way it moves is just robotic enough that it reminds you that it is an animatronic, which is, I think, important to the story. And this is like, it is harmonic to that. It's like, it's not exactly the same. It's his face is a little kind of janky. Yeah. But it is, the way it moves is just so evocative of like, no, that's what I think of when I think of Chucky. So this really is well done.
And it's a major step up. Again, Brad Dourif did all of his recording well ahead of time so that they could match, to his reading.
And he's full in this movie.
Incredible. The puppeteers for this, one of their names is N. Brock Winkless IV.
Christ.
Yeah.
No, that's the last part of his name.
Yeah, I forgot that. So I had it crossed out.
That's the craziest name I've ever heard.
He worked on Mac and Me, all three Child's Plays. He did work in T2.
Okay.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Alien 3, Harry and the Hendersons, Tales from the Crypt. Like he did, he is a puppeteer for the Crypt Keeper. So he returned to work as one of Chucky's puppeteers, as did Van Snowden. Van Snowden had worked on things like H.R. Pufnstuf, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, Land of the Lost, TV shows from like the 60s and 70s that are made by, what are their names? Sid and Marty Krofft, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know why I know this shit.
It's amazing. We've taken detours into things I've never heard about, and you're saying them like second nature. So I like watching you go.
You've never seen Land of the Lost? Well, there was that movie version.
I've seen the Land of the Lost version with Will Ferrell and Danny McBride.
So the TV show version of that is made by these pair of brothers. Anyway, they do a lot of puppets in their shows back then. But he also did work on Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Playhouse, Tales from the Crypt. And he also worked on Bogus Journey, and he did work in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Wow. Okay.
So he has a good pedigree there for puppeteers. which is why it stands out. I hadn't mentioned their names in the prior two movies, and I felt like I needed to.
Well, I think it's good too because it gives you an idea of, we can sit and talk about how good the puppeteering is all day long because the technology is great, but if the puppeteer sucks, the puppeteering sucks.
Yeah.
Which makes the puppet suck. But so it being such an advanced piece of technology at this point, and then also having such good fucking puppeteers, it makes him, at no point is it like, oh, wow, what a good puppet. It's like you really do buy in.
Yeah, you're getting a performance out of it.
Yeah, it's between the facial expressions and the way like the people in the film and in the scenes interact with him, and then the way he delivers his lines and the way they've kind of matched those two things. It's just a character.
Mm-hmm. So like Don Mancini he said that this is his least favorite entry in the series. And like I had said before, he felt like he had just run out of ideas after the second film. He's elaborated saying things like he wasn't really pleased with all the casting. He felt that Jeremy Silvers, I think is how you pronounce that, was too old for the role of Tyler. And that Dakin Matthews, who plays Colonel Cochran, didn't give the like Arlie Ermy Full Metal Jacket performance that he was, I guess, hoping for that character. But it also kind of led to and not making as much money as they probably hoped.
Yeah.
It did kind of put the series on hold for the next like 7 years.
Which, when you look at franchises where they've had to take big gaps in between entries, it's usually because the entry that they've taken the gap from wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back and it's revitalized. Or in the case of Scream, it comes back at just a more culturally relevant moment. And I would say hiatuses are a good thing.
They definitely can be.
Marvel. I would say a hiatus is a perfectly fine thing, Marvel.
Yeah. We kind of got one last year because we only had Deadpool Wolverine. It was the only Marvel movie that went to theaters last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's the kind of a break that we got. Okay. The next and kind of last bit of this isn't really production talk. This is more of like a serious note here.
Okay.
There was a suggested link with this film made after the murders of James Bulger. This was a murder that happened in February of 1993 in Merseyside, England, where two 10-year-old boys abducted, tortured, and murdered a 2-year-old boy named James Patrick Bulger, maybe Bulger, I don't know. And the reason that there was a connection here is that basically it was said that they had imitated a scene in which one of the Chucky's victims was splashed with blue paint. Now, we know, having watched the movie, toward the end, they're playing a paintball war game.
Simulation, yeah.
And so they have red and blue paint. Chucky gets blue paint on him at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And so a psychologist who had had to interview the boys after this whole thing and during the trial, he stated that there was a link with the video, the movie, was that the father of one of the two boys had rented Child's Play 3 in the months leading up to this murder.
Okay.
But police officers who, did this investigation, they found that the boy in question, one of the two killers,
mm-hmm.
Was not living with the father at the time that the movie was rented.
Okay.
And that he claims that he had never seen the movie. He didn't like horror films. It wouldn't have been a thing that he watched at 10 years old.
Sure.
So I think it really came down to them looking for a reason for this to have happened.
Yeah. How bizarre is that?
But it led to like the trilogy of Child's Play films being like pulled off of shelves in England for a while.
Well, England for a very long time has been very, very. Oh, is that horror? No, take it away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only because I know people that have either lived or have spent a lot of time there. And the conversations have been like, oh yeah, no, horror does like between 1985 and 2000, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It's it
for
is
the,
a bizarre,
for the country that birthed the Sex Pistols. It's fucking crazy that they're like, ew, no. And it's like, what?
They have a whole like list of kind of banned movies that they call video nasties. And this kind of like made them dust that list off again and be like, maybe we should take a look at this. And but like from what I've read, and I sat and read through the whole Wikipedia page last night about this case.
It's funny because it seems like everything that you and I love in general is considered some form or fashion of evil. And maybe that's about us. And I think a lot of the people that we know that listen to this show they kind of filter, and people that I work with have listened to the show and have given us, some feedback and have enjoyed the show. Coworker of mine, Eric, if you've continued listening, enjoy your shout out. It's free. But he mentioned that he listened to our Army of Darkness episode because he loves that movie. And he didn't know that was an Evil Dead film, that was one of those movies in the trilogy. And then a friend of yours that we know from a show outside of this, who I kind of know, let you know that they did not know that as well.
Right.
So that's two people that we educated. But that's what the point of the show is, folks. But the interesting thing about that to me is that all of those movies, all of the music you and I listen to, if there's, D&D or Magic, and we don't play either because we're cool.
We do not play them.
We're cool guys. I have tattoos. You have many records. We're cool guys. But it's just like everything that we love is always considered satanic panic. And I find it interesting because this movie is a pseudo possession movie. The series is a pseudo possession series because it's so adjacent, but it's not Satanism, it's voodoo. And I know that they didn't like the voodoo in the beginning. They hold on to it in this film,
right?
Like they did into it, and they do for the rest of the franchise. But I like the fact that its rules never bend, but they can then use them to kind of introduce new things, introduce new concepts, new characters.
Who the fuck are you?
I thought you guys only said 3 sentences.
I'm new and improved.
I never saw a doll like you before.
All right, kid. Fun's over. Where the hell's Andy?
Andy?
Can't you read? He was supposed to get this package. Tampering with the mail is a federal offense.
Sorry. Is he your best friend?
He's more than that. He's my new lease on life. Wait a minute. I got a new body, and I ain't told anyone about my little secret yet. So, what's your name, kid?
I have 2 things about that clip. Number 1, that clip is fantastic.
Yeah.
And in editing that clip to put into our episode, that clip starts with Chucky bursting out of the box, the Good Guy Dolls box, and he like screams. So if you're listening to this episode, you owe us gratitude because it started with this horrific audio sting and like Chucky going like, and we made the executive decision to start the clip after the screaming.
Yeah.
The other thing, how the fuck does him going like, who the fuck are you? How is that kid not like, well, red flag?
Yeah, immediately.
Or like at least start crying. He's just like, why would the doll say that? And then like opens up, like recognizes that Chucky is a doll, but then opens up to him and begins to answer questions like he's a person. I don't know. That's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's a little, and that's kind of the theme of what I have a problem with in this movie is you take the time to go, no, Charles Lee Ray is a voodoo soul trapped in a doll that needs to use the chant to put his soul into the first person he reveals his true nature to. You've kept all of that, but you do all of that by being like Chucky screaming and going, fuck you, to this little boy who doesn't think to say anything or do it's, you have the believability of the rules of a universe with the unbelievability of the way that no one would ever behave like that.
Yeah. He doesn't like, Chucky doesn't hide that he's not a good guy,
Right.
pun intended.
The other thing about Chucky and the way he comes across, and we mentioned earlier that this movie doesn't take place in Chicago.
Right.
It's the first in the franchise that has moved away from it. But the other thing is that you have these killers that are either voiceless, Michael, Jason, whomever, and then the voiced characters. You've got, Robert Englund. We talked about this in last week's episode, personality killers. You've got like Robert Englund is very, fuck you, bitch. And you've got all these different, that's a terrible impression, I'm realizing, but you've got all these characters. And I mentioned this last week, but in this movie, it's even more. Holy shit. There's nowhere else Chucky could be from. They might as well call him the Chicago killer. He's like, hey, where the fuck do you think you're going? And it's just like the craziest, like he's eating hot dogs with like buffalo sauce or whatever those people are doing up there. The wonderful hot dogs they're eating.
I have no idea.
I don't know. But all I know is that is the most thick.
Yes.
And it's so to hear him talk and to be this little guy who's pissed as shit. He's a murderer, but it's that also that national, like that regional dialect. I think it adds a lot to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives him a personality and it sticks him in a place and time.
It's, they say that, well, let's set this scene. Let's put like a crumpled up like Doritos bag or like a cigarette in an ashtray or whatever to make this room feel lived in.
Yeah.
Having him
the mise en scene.
I don't know whatever the fuck that means, but the point, I'm not a movie critic.
Right.
I'm a dumb guy with a microphone and this costs a lot of money, so I get to use it. But the point is him having that dialect or that accent, he feels real. He feels lived in.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I agree.
That out. Listening to that clip right now as we record this episode is just like, God, because he's like, who the fuck are you? It's like, oh God.
That's your first line of dialogue to this little child.
Yeah, that's good.
The movie begins with
a really good like intro credit sequence.
I really like it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for like a Pee-wee's Big Adventure, like Rube Goldberg machine as the credits play or whatever. I like a credit sequence with business. It makes it more interesting. It makes it necessary to watch. You're not having to, you've got those, old like 50s, 60s movies where it's just all of the credits are in the opening.
Text on a screen.
Yeah.
All
and
the
it's
names.
so boring. You just sit and fast forward. So I like when you don't need to do that.
Yeah. This one gives you a lot of stuff to look at. Starts in the abandoned Play Pals factory from the end of 2.
Also feels very lived in. They take what seemingly the same set and just fuck it up.
Yeah. Everything is rusted out. Everything is covered in all of the cobwebs.
Yeah. And it's like the only lighting that you're getting is like shafts of light from what look to be like roof windows, like skylights.
Yeah. As like cleaners come in and they start just cleaning up this factory.
But it's amazing because you've got the 9 months difference between one film and the next. It has to be the same set. I'm convinced it is.
Yeah, I would think so. They just aged it.
But they aged it so well that it looks like two completely different places.
Yeah.
I think the production, I think these movies are a testament to how if you've got a really committed production team that shares the vision with the director, you can make something that should be fucking stupid stand out as effective, because this is a nonsense scene. It doesn't make any sense that they would have left this factory abandoned for seemingly no reason.
Yeah.
They don't explain in this film at all that the events of 2 have affected the sale of the good guy doll.
Yeah. They stop producing it.
Right.
But like immediately?
Right. Because this is where we go in this scene, is that eventually it's revealed that the molten blob of plastic that is Chucky is still on the floor.
His headless, melted corpse. They pick up with like this big like claw machine claw.
Why? I have no idea. Why that isn't a guy with a trash bag.
They needed, they needed a reason that they would have something that would like stab into him a bit so that he would bleed,
and then
pick it up and take it over the molten,
which that's still working for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
But that is disgusting. Something about the visual about this mound of plastic, because as the viewer, you're like, oh, well, that's just plastic. And then it gets punctured by those weird little pinchies and it bleeds. And 2 things went off in my mind. Number 1, there's fucking biological material in this. And number 2, that's fresh blood. So Chucky is still alive and seemingly undying,
Right.
stuck in this Hulk. It made me think of recently, within the last 5 years, Marvel Comics killed Wolverine in the comics by having him sealed in a tomb of adamantium. Like adamantium covered his body and sealed shut, like hardened, and he was stuck inside of it. And it made me think of like, because it's later revealed, spoiler for Marvel Comics, but later it's revealed that he survived that. I was like, oh my God, Chucky's been alive this whole time.
Yeah.
Which starts me off on a new segment that I have in the Child's Play movies called Poor Chucky. We kind of did it the last two, but I really want to get into it this time.
Great.
'Cause fucking poor Chucky.
The blood is then like dribbled down into the molten plastic
Like mixes in the vat.
and mixes in. And I don't know if it's like, I think it's just to create a cool image for the opening of these credits, but it's like the blood drips in there and then immediately the stuff starts bubbling and it's like, well, did they turn it on or is his blood reactivating something in there?
I took that to be more of like almost like a witchcraft. Like there's some like black magic involved that like, hear my voice crack like a toddler. It felt like there was something evil that his blood is so, voodoo toxic that it began a reaction.
But that then, mixes up and then we watch the rest of the credit sequence is of basically a good guy doll that's unmelting,
which is an excellent shot because it does to a degree look like it is the finalization process. What I will say is that vat looks like a fucking above ground swimming pool. It looks like it holds thousands of gallons of liquid. Did they only make the one?
No, because later they say that they've got a bunch that are ready. They'll be ready in like two weeks or something.
Are they all Chucky?
I don't know.
Or did his blood?
That's where the idea of multiple Chuckies almost came from, I think.
Okay, yeah, I can follow that.
And they just didn't have the money to do that,
which is a shame.
Yeah. But that's kind of where he was getting at there.
You then have the first I'm doing big air quotes, folks. The big first line of dialogue of Chucky, where when it stops melting and is he's
fully formed.
And he just starts screaming because poor fucking Chucky. He's like, fuck.
I have no mouth, yet I must scream. We then go to a meeting with the Play Pals toy company heads. And they basically, kind of like with Child's Play 2, they give us a very brief explanation of what the events of the first two films.
Yeah, I like this one because you've got this unnamed character, doesn't matter who the fuck it is, and he's very much like, hey, we shouldn't fucking sell these things. All of the drama that came from the murders surrounding the doll in the first time we released them, we really shouldn't sell these fucking things. But then the rest of the board is like, well, no, they've already been made, so we're going to sell them. And watching it, you looked at me and you went, why are they having this meeting now? And for the rest of the movie, that fucked me up. Because it's like that one guy could have saved so many lives, but he decided to stay quiet like a fucking coward.
It just doesn't make any sense because the whole point of that scene is like they're sitting there and they're talking about like, hey, these things have happened, but we think it's time that it's been 8 years. Let's dust off the good guy brand.
Right.
Let's start making them. We've already been making them. They're going to be on store shelves in
like a month.
Yeah, like a month. Okay, yeah, I sign off on this. And the guy's like, hey, what about the murders?
Yeah. He's basically, his point is like, if something else happens, we are fucked. Yeah. So we should maybe not sell these things. And then the CEO is like, I already made up my mind. Besides, they're already made up. And then so it's unilateral. Like, no, fuck you, reasonable guy. We're making them. And then we go to the CEO's office. And things happen, and we'll get to them. But to jump ahead just a bit, he's got two fucking good guy dolls in his office. Yeah. So they made them. So why is this one guy, this whistleblower, this Edward Snowden of Chucky dolls, why is he like, maybe we shouldn't fucking make... It's like, it's
too late.
Where were you? Yeah. You should have been in these... You should have been raising this flag. Why didn't you go and send this on Blue Sky? Let the world know.
Yeah, it really is a bizarre breakdown. If you think about it for a second.
Yeah.
The guy in charge there, Sullivan, he is a returning character from Child's Play 2, played by Peter Haskell. I've said this, but he was in The Phantom of Hollywood, which is a TV genre film from 1974.
He's also in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
I don't think that's true.
Fuck.
He was mostly known for the soap opera Search for Tomorrow.
Okay.
But he gives this line of like, the bottom line is the bottom line, and what are children but consumer trainees?
Which, by the way, he's right.
Yeah, unfortunately. We get our first POV shot whenever he's handed the Chucky doll.
Yep.
From inside the box, we're looking out. And
it's so simple and it works. It lifts 1,000 pounds away because it's, that one's Chucky. Now we know. We don't
but it's
have
also,
to think
it's
about
like,
it.
did Chucky plan that somehow that he would be given to Sullivan?
I don't. Oh God, maybe you're right. Maybe his blood happened to fall into the vat right as they turned it on.
Yeah.
And like he was just the first one off the line.
Maybe. I don't know. Because that's what they do. They say, I think this is the first one. So
do you think him, and this is going back a second, do you think him reforming and screaming is supposed to be like artistic, or do you think he actually started screaming? Because if he actually started screaming, do you think the factory workers also this is just a series of people fucking up that keeps leading Chucky to Andy? Because any of them should have been like, hey boss, this one's screaming.
They pull
like
that
a
one
man.
off the line. It's just like, whoa, well, that was bizarre. Put him in the box.
Make sure you give him a knife. Put a knife in the box. But it's like, hey, this one's screaming like a full-grown man. He seems like he's from Chicago. He told me his name was Charles Lee Ray. I don't know. He wants to play a game called Hide the Soul.
He loves that game. Sullivan's office, his like penthouse suite, if you will, is full of toys, as you would expect. The other word, is it the same guy? No, I think it's a different worker.
Guy. Yes. It's like his assistant.
Yeah. Just like, I'm going to go home to my wife. It's my anniversary.
I have to take the reins here because this pissed me off so bad the first time rewatching this movie that it distracted me from the opening scene. Yeah. Like the opening scene with Andy.
Right.
Okay, so he's there. It's his assistant, and he's like takes the envelope or whatever, and he's like, all right, I'm out for the night. And it's if you like The Office, it's the St. Patrick's Day episode where they're all trying to leave, but Joe Bennett is in the office and they don't feel comfortable leaving while the big boss is there. It's that bit. It's, well, I guess I can work on this one later when I'm at home. We then follow that guy, and if I sound annoyed, it's because I fucking am. We follow that guy, the assistant, into the elevator, where we watch him stand in the elevator waiting for the door to close. And we hold on him the entire time as the door closes. And then we hold on the closed doors for like a full second. And then we cut back to the character the scene is about. It's like, who is that guy? Why did we need to see any of that? It's not important at all. No. But it's like, I'm just so confused.
It is like 8 to 10 seconds. And it is bizarre that we hold on it for as long as
it's Kirshner's like stepbrother or something.
Yeah. He's Ted Kirshner. After he leaves,
that was a good joke. That was a really good joke.
The camera pushes in on the good guy box sitting on the couch, and it reveals that it's empty.
It is.
And there's a big music sting that happens.
The things that they do with Chucky in this movie, where it's the little reveals of like he either is or isn't where we thought he was.
Right.
They play with him in the spaces he's in this movie very well.
Yeah.
It's something that's in my notes. And this one, I think, is good and bad, this whole sequence. Because basically, he spends the next couple minutes of the film kind of fucking with this guy. Yeah. And it's good in how they do that, but it's bad because of, number one, it makes zero sense, some of the things he does. Like, so for example, he like takes the guy's remote and hides it.
Yeah, he turns off the TV so that it catches Sullivan's attention.
Right. And then he's like then looking for the remote, and it's shown that Chucky and like the geography of the office becomes super confusing because then like it looks like Chucky's like across the room, but then he's back under the sofa and he slides the remote back to the guy and then is gone again, but then spills a jar of marbles so that the guy slips and falls. So it was like, well, then what the fuck was the remote for?
Yeah. And I don't know how he's controlling all of like the remote control cars and tanks and helicopters and any of that, because that just seems to be moving on its own.
And we're not discussing the Mark Hamill Aubrey Plaza remake, but that would make sense because in that film he's like technology. He's like technology gone. He's like Ultron, but Chucky. Yeah, it's super, super weird. And he's got like the two good guy dolls that he's kind of displayed. And this is where we see that there are multiple and they're set up at his desk, at the CEO's desk.
Larry and Polly are their names. And they begin
like talking to each other. Like if you've ever seen those videos of like the mocking parrots.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. It's like they're kind of having a conversation with each other. And it is a good scene. It's very much how I would want a haunted toy to kill somebody who runs a toy factory.
Yes.
It's like I would very much want chocolate men to melt Willy Wonka in a fondue pot.
Oh, yeah, that would be fitting.
Yeah. But then all of this silly toy stuff, he just chokes him to death. He just strangles him.
He's the strangler.
Well, and I wrote that down as a note. It's the first mention of the fact that he is a strangler that we've had for a long time in this series. Like he's like the good old days, nothing like a strangulation to get the blood flowing. And it's like, oh, that's right. He is the Lakeshore Strangler.
Yeah.
Chucky had a serial killer name. Well, we assume serial killer, a murderer name to some degree.
Yeah. He, in Child's Play 2, they reference that he is, he has done at least 12 murders, I think. They give like a dozen. So,
like I said in Child's Play 1, the only reason that I have any confusion as to whether or not he was a serial killer, because the further in the series, the further you go, the more it is assumed that he was a serial killer, especially in the show.
Yeah.
But like, why does he have a partner in the first one?
Bizarre.
I have no idea who Eddie would then be. So that's a bit that doesn't really get explained, at least without retconning to a certain degree. This is also the first utterance of "Don't fuck with the Chuck."
Yes,
which is fantastic. Don't fuck with the Chuck. I love that line. The delivery so much.
Is amazing. His work is incredible in this film.
I think now is as good a time as any to discuss with our audience why we think calling Chucky Chunky, but like Chunky, why we think that is so fucking funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
So we have a friend named Charles Lee Ray, and he's gonna put his soul in me.
Yeah.
No, we have a friend. It is a longtime friend. How long have you known Bug?
I have known Bug since probably he was like 8 or 10 years old, and he's about 4 years younger than I am. I want to say
very long time. Yeah, because you're 48.
Yeah,
but we went to Halloween Horror Nights all together.
Yeah,
and you were trying to meet up with him.
Yeah, we were doing if anyone's been to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, and you don't get there as a group, and you're then trying to meet other people and form a group, it's nearly impossible.
The entire theme park makes a circle with 2 figure 8s on either side. So you can be in the same part, like the same hemisphere of the park, and completely miss each other.
Yeah. And your timing is always going to be, oh, well, I just stepped in this line. Oh, well, I'm just stepping out of this line. Oh, okay. And it takes forever.
You and I even, because very briefly, I have a pass because of back injury that I have. I have a pass that I wait in lines differently, and you typically use your express pass
if I have it.
So we are both going through the express line, and even still, it's impossible to coordinate.
Yeah,
because it's just a busy event. And we're busy. Well, so you have messaged Bug to find out where he is.
Yeah,
and he texts you back. What he means to text back is, "Oh, I'm getting in line for Chucky." Right. Because that year there was the Chucky house that we've mentioned before.
Yes. But the way that I guess autocorrect, or maybe he fat fingered it or something whenever he's texting, it came out as like, oh, I'm getting in line for Chunky.
Right.
And I thought that was the funniest thing I have ever read, is someone calling Chucky Chunky.
So we will probably do that a handful more times.
Yeah. I want to say Alistair did it in the Child's Play
I think he
episode.
did. Yeah. But yeah, so Chunky is very funny. Hashtag. Well, that's impossible because it's just Chunky. There's
Yeah.
But it's hashtag Chunky, but the U is caps.
Yeah, that's how we'll know. And then we finally catch up with Andy.
Yeah, because Chucky like hacks the computer of the CEO to find where Andy went,
Yeah.
which is number one, it's very early 90s.
Right. But because this is 8 years later, this is taking place in 1998. You have to remember that.
Oh man, so they would have had like AOL by that point.
Right.
Why didn't he just email the website? I don't know. Yeah.
I wonder if that's part of the reason they also set it where they did. I've been trying to wrap my brain around that because they in the boardroom scene, there's like that projector screen that comes out and it like folds into the wall.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that could kind of be like future tech of like
it's
8 years in the future.
But it's 8 years.
Right.
You don't have to go too crazy.
No.
You don't need a flying car and like Chucky to be in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It's 8 years later.
But I just don't think that they knew exactly what like that looked like. And so it was like, well, if we just put him in a military school, it's going to look the same no matter what.
Yeah, I guess. And like, where do troubled youths go? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it kind of fits in that way. It's just it's just not my favorite, but I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out.
That's a good guess.
So yes, Chucky hacks in and finds where Andy has been sent,
Right.
and that is to the Kent Military Academy.
Yes.
And so I noticed it on this like the second rewatch this week, but he actually notices De Silva from the bus riding in.
Okay. De Silva being the
female
love
lead,
interest,
yeah. So we are introduced to a bunch of characters. Basically, this whole sequence is just introduction of all the players here. He meets Colonel Cochran, who I don't know, is just a, you know, they say later he did what, 2 tours in Nam, or something.
He's kind of likable in his way. Like Andy's talking to him about. I like this scene a lot where he meets Andy in his office and he's trying to figure out what Andy's deal is, basically. And Andy's giving really like kind of cut and dry guidance counselor answers, like, oh well, you know, I had a hard time adjusting. And he's like, yeah, I can read your file, kid. Like, what is up with you?
Yeah.
And for a minute, it's like, oh, he's being like supportive. And he's like, if you fuck up in my school, and it's like, oh no, never mind. You're just gonna be a dick.
Yeah. Played by Dakin Matthews. He's done a lot of TV work.
Okay.
But he was in Flubber, the Robin Williams 1997 film. He was also in the Coen Brothers version of True Grit in 2010.
Okay.
And he's worked with Steven Spielberg on a couple of films. He was in Lincoln and Bridge of Spies.
Okay.
Those are, you know, just interesting things I found him in, but a lot of TV work.
The 2010 Coen Brothers True Grit, is that Jeff Bridges? Okay, so I have seen that.
Yeah, that movie is fantastic.
It is very good.
But yeah, and then he gives one of the taglines for this movie is kind of what he gives there, which is from the poster is, there comes a time when you put away childhood things. And the tagline on the poster is, but some things won't stay put. He gives
but some things won't stay put.
Yeah,
That's not a very good tagline.
Well, with the thing I said before that, it's the whole thing.
It's both on the poster?
Yeah.
That's a wordy fucking poster.
Yeah, it's really wordy.
It's just all words, and then in the bottom right is a picture of Chucky.
Yeah, we need an audiobook version of the poster for Child's Play 3.
And it'll have Sharky in it, who again, remember, Saruman.
And
Please
read
continue.
by Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
So he gives that like 1 Corinthians line, and I know it's 1 Corinthians because he tells Andy that it's from 1 Corinthians. He doesn't give a chapter or anything, but just the whole thing. Anyway, we then shortly get an introduction for Sergeant Botnick.
Yes.
Who is the barber, and
Okay.
this is a bizarre character.
In my notes, because I'm watching this movie, and the first rewatch, I had completely forgotten, some would say repressed, the fact that the barber is the way that he is. But in my notes, I have written the barber is and then in all caps, huge sex creep. And then I write my notes like I'm having a conversation with you because I usually just read them, but sometimes they're funny enough. And I want to point out the fact that I wrote it down. I write the barber is a huge sex creep. Also, he says, and it's not important, but he says, quote, presto, you're bald, end quote, to a kid who obviously still has hair.
Yeah, he never shaves anybody bald.
Right, but he was like, oh, yeah, you're bald now. Okay, so I need to set this up. If you haven't seen this film yet, number one, and you told me this, and I did not know this, the barber is played by Frank from Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Like kind of the main antagonist of the first Hellraiser movie.
Yeah, the actor's name is Andrew Robinson. And he was in Dirty Harry, but then he's in Hellraiser as Larry or Frank Cotton.
And he's good in that.
Yeah, he's really good.
And like the movie is about him. Like to a degree.
Yeah.
It takes place around his being kind of reborn in a way.
Right.
And holy shit. Then he plays the sex creep in Child's Play 3. What a weird dip to take professionally.
Bizarre.
Yeah, really bizarre. He is like, to set the stage, every military academy, it would necessitate at least one, probably a few barbers to keep kids' hair very short because military standard, hair is in a crew cut or pure shaved off. He seems to derive like sexual pleasure from shaving. And I don't even think it has anything to do. I don't think it's like pedophilic in nature.
No.
He just wants to shit. Because like way later, and I'm jumping ahead, but way later, he finds Chucky and wants to cut his hair. He just wants things to be bald. Oh God, another Sunny reference. He just wants things to be pure.
Yeah.
He's also got this wall of photos of these kids with locks of their hair.
From presumably their first haircut from him.
Right. I don't know, but it's weird.
It is like the whole room is covered in this.
And he shows up like 3 times in the movie. It's not one and done.
No. He gives this explanation, like you said, military short, whatever, but he gives the explanation of like the reason that we cut, soldiers' hair short is so that they don't get, it grabbed by somebody.
Warriors of old couldn't pull their hair.
And then slash their throat, which is,
yeah.
What happens with him? Anyway.
Pin in the slashing of the barber's throat.
It's also the introduction of Tyler.
Yes. The young child who he says you're bald, but isn't.
Yes. He is basically, this is the only thing that actor has ever done.
Makes sense. He's terrible.
From what I've seen. He is playing, I thought it was a Sega Game Gear, but I think it was before that. It's an Atari Lynx.
So here's the thing
system.
with that. We live in a technologically advanced world where I saw that and my brain didn't think anything of it. Only when I looked up the year it came out for a completely different reason. My brain was like, well, hold on, because I thought it was a fucking Steam Deck.
Oh, yeah. It does have that same look. It's funny that we've gone back to basically that same build.
It just so happens to be that where the big black plastic handheld gaming device then could play games that now like your refrigerator can play versus, like the Steam Deck is basically a full-fledged computer.
Yeah.
So.
You see him play that system like all throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And like every other time you see Tyler, he's playing that.
Which is weird because later on in the film, per the clip we played, Chucky does meet Tyler and their meeting is sort of interrupted by staff of the military school. And they're like, well, you can't have that. We don't play with that. And it's like, but you let him run around and play with the video game. Yeah. You can't have a toy, but he can have a video.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of answers of like who Tyler is, but everybody seems to know who he is. His dad is a pilot, I believe, in the military. And so I guess he's just kind of stuck here.
He's much younger than everyone, like by a lot. He seems younger than everybody else.
There are other kids, like there's a whole kids wing, and you see them during the lunch scene or the breakfast scene, I guess.
But like, why is he hanging out with Andy?
I don't know.
Like, yeah, that's weird.
It's bizarre. This is also where we get the return of the good guy doll commercial. I think it's the same animation from Child's Play.
I think so too. It's another testament to the Don Mancini approach to the series of everything is the same. There's no reason to throw any lore away. There's no reason to throw your characters or any of the stuff that you've created away and to just continue to use it. That continuity makes the world feel lived in by the nature of the repetition. And this is a great example of that because we've seen those commercials now in 2 of the 3 movies. So in the 3rd movie, even in a military school, it's like, no, these are what that teaches you is that this is an incredibly popular toy. It's very popular with kids, and that the murders didn't affect the way kids view the toy.
Yeah, they don't know anything about that because, Tyler has basically the same reaction that Andy did in the first film. Yeah.
Yay.
You know,
and the thing is, it's world building. You don't lift a finger to do it.
No.
And I think that's just super. This series, and I'll say that 5,000 more times, even into the last 2 of movies. They stick with that.
Yes.
And it's great.
It's always expounding on the lore that was put before it.
It's like they keep adding new nerves, but the spinal column's the same. And I only thought to say that because of my horrible, horrible back injuries. Please continue.
Andy is getting his haircut when that plays, and it is like these super close-up shots of his eyes as they're just bugging out.
You know what it reminded me of?
Hearing that commercial is sending him back.
It reminded me of the boy boo boy boo
from Kill Bill.
Yeah. Because it is. It's like the snap to him. And you were right. That kid does very well with no, this shit has fucked me up for life.
He makes it back to his dorm or room or what have you. And they set up this little kind of a fake out scare of there's something in the closet, and out from there bursts Whitehurst, who has been tied up by someone who he calls Shelton, who you meet in just a second. But that is Andy's roommate, and it is one of several times that a character is shown in a closet or coming out of a closet.
Yeah. Would you say that this is the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 of the Child's Play series?
I don't necessarily think that. It's where this series kind of goes eventually with Seed and then with the television show. It gets very, it gets very queer. It's very much in the LGBTQ, space.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm aware, Don Mancini is a openly gay man.
Okay.
And so I don't know if even this, soon into this series, he was kind of maybe hinting at things or sneaking these things in.
Sure.
But I just think that he probably writes from a lot of personal experience.
Yeah.
Setting this at an all boys school. No, it's not an all boys school. It's just it's mostly boys. It's a military school.
It's a place of masculinity.
Right. And, playing with those themes there, in Child's Play, there is a scene when Andy hides in the closet from Chucky.
Yeah.
Where he finds the bat. I'm racking my brain for Child's Play 2, if there's any sort of closet.
Yes. The school room, the classroom. Yeah.
Yes. Chucky is shoved into the closet there. So I may be reading into it, or it may be something that he was kind of putting these kind of, queer themes in.
Yeah.
To thread it along. But this movie especially, I noticed it.
I think the visual use of closet, I think using a closet as a visual cue of that sort of narrative is pretty cliche at this point. So I wouldn't think that that's reading into it, especially because of where this series goes. Right. If it were other series, maybe, but not this one.
Right. It's just something I noticed. I'll point out a couple more as we go along. But Whitehurst is
very much the nerdy sort of Ron Weasley kind of friend.
Yeah.
Though I wouldn't say that they're like best friends in this movie. That's not really what that character is established as. It's more like Neville if we're doing Harry Potter references.
Yeah, and I think it's just that's your roommate. You're stuck in this situation. I'm going to get as close to this guy as I need to.
He mentions that we don't do the personality thing, and it kind of establishes that Andy's character is called Barkley, except by Chucky, who calls him Andy.
Yeah. That is the other thing is any of the names that we kind of use through this is it's a military school. They call each other by their last names.
Yeah.
Whitehurst is played by Dean Jacobson. Doesn't have a lot of credits. He was in a movie called Lobster Man from Mars from 1989. And then he was in Junior, which is the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he gets pregnant, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, my God.
So I haven't seen either of those movies. I don't know, but those are the two credits I can kind of find for him.
Weird.
He's introduced. Our next thing is that the big scene? Yeah, like the where they have to stand at attention. I don't know what that's called.
I don't know either, but I do know that that scene establishes two things. Number one, the Shelton guy, Whitehurst says he's like a god in this place. And it's assumed, I guess, that he's somehow in charge. He seems like he's their age.
Yeah,
but
he is, as far as I'm aware, but he is like an
instructor.
Yeah, he's like a higher rank of the students there, I guess.
This is where it feels very Full Metal Jacket, Ermy sort of.
Yes.
Because that guy is like, you are without a doubt the most, and it's, I hate the character. Not because it's like, that's a bad person as a character. I hate the character because the performer is like annoying.
Yeah.
Like visually and like the way he performs. It's like, I don't mean annoying in that like he is an antagonist. So you are meant to, I find his performance grating. I don't really like when he's on camera.
He is somebody who, as a character, I loathe. I don't know if it's the performance. There are so many times in that where he gives a delivery of a line and I laugh out loud. Yeah. Because there's just something about how serious he is taking everything. Yeah. Of being in the school and being like, he's in charge of this whole thing and whatever, but his delivery is just like weird at times.
And I think that's my problem is his delivery, because his delivery is very much supposed to be the old grizzled, like irascible sort of drill sergeant. And instead we get like this kind of like smug Biff Tannen faced kid who I just can't fucking stand.
Yeah. He's like in terms of high school, he is the senior to Andy's, freshman maybe.
Right. The other thing that the scene does, outside of showing that guy is an unlovable dick, is showing that De Silva is somebody that Andy immediately seems to take to and is funny.
Yeah.
Because that character is funny in that scene.
God, that delivery is amazing as well. De Silva is played by Perry Reeves. She was in a lot of TV as well, but she was in Old School, the Will Ferrell like 2003 comedy.
Oh, okay.
And then she did a long stint. She was in like 74 episodes of Entourage.
Oh, wow.
So that's like where she's really kind of known after this.
Yeah. You interrupted the viewing. I think it was our first viewing together of this movie to go. And if you think that De Silva looks much older than Andy, it's because she is.
She's like 4 years older than he is, but
yeah.
I don't know age in the movie, how close they are.
Yeah.
Next, we get our reintroduction to Chucky.
Yes.
He finds a way into this military school.
Fucking hilarious. Yeah. We go back to Tyler, who goes to like the postmaster of the academy. And for some fucking reason,
he's checking to see if he's gotten any letters from his dad.
Right. And for some reason, the guy's like, oh, by the way, if you see that Andy kid, here's a package for him.
Yeah.
Which like,
again, it's this weird thing of like, everybody knows who Tyler is, but we don't really get an explanation as to who or why.
It's like Zero from Holes. It's like, oh, he's been here forever, so everyone knows him.
Except he's this young kid.
Yeah. Like, the character's got to be, the way he acts, he needs to be like 5 years old.
Yeah. He's probably like 5 or 6, like Andy was in the first film.
Yeah. But so he takes the doll, we don't know it's the doll. Right. We can assume it is based on the size of the box. But he takes it and he drops it, and a corner of the package tears open. And again, it's what I talked about with the cinematography. It's that focus on colors, because you see that good guy doll box poke out of the corner, you immediately know what it is. And that's so effective throughout this series, using those. We talked about this in 2 as well last week, where they kind of bring Chucky back to life. And it's like an operating room, but everything's made out of like yellow and blue plastic.
Yeah.
It's very color coordinated, which I love. He gets excited because he's a fucking kid and it's a good guy doll. And that commercial pays heavy lifting here because it shows that everyone knows what that brand is. And this is a young boy who's super interested. So he takes it into like a weird, like ammunitions closet.
It's to the armory. He takes it specifically there.
He should not be able to go in there.
I wouldn't think so.
There are guns and grenades and shit. He should not be able to go in there. But he does. He tears open the box. This is where we have our clip. Chucky realizes in this moment that he can, now that he has introduced himself to, in a new body, a new kid, he can take his body. He says that he has to pay the troll toll to get into that boy's soul. Third Sonny reference.
Yeah, he does. He does say that exactly.
Yeah. No, and it's like, we're going to play a game. What's the game called? Hide the Soul. So a fun callback to the first movie. And it's a pretty good scene. And we mentioned briefly, he's allowed to play with the Game Boy all day, but not with Chucky. And Carly had mentioned that this seems very much like sort of like an exercise in toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Nobody notices if this little kid is playing with this handheld video game all day fucking long, not paying attention, being whatever. But the second he puts a doll in his hand, it's like, well, no, we're not supposed to play with dolls. Give me that back.
Yeah. Colonel Cochran is very, very like stern about that. Of like, well, you're a boy and boys don't play with dolls, do they?
Yeah.
Before, taking the Chucky doll and
then he chameleons.
I love that.
Love it. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, we mentioned the fact that Chucky, as a good guy doll, can kind of hide in plain sight because he will adjust his face and his voice back to what the doll is supposed to look like from retail. And so he does that, and he's like I'll be back. And it's it's so good. It's effective.
Yeah, it's the thing of like Cochran is no wiser,
right?
But like Tyler knows.
Again, Tyler, that kid is a stupid kid. Because at no point is he like, hey, by the way, Colonel or whatever, this doll just threatened to fucking kill me. So maybe we do something about that.
Yeah, because he does. Chucky, before Cochran comes in, he immediately goes to the chant. Yeah. And he gets part of the way through it, and then he's interrupted, much like he was in Child's Play 2. Well,
and then another thing I love is, again, you repeat these things, these themes, these visuals. As he continues the chant, the storm cloud rolls in. We cut outside to, it's like physical exercise. It's like running like laps or whatever.
Yeah.
The storm clouds roll in, and it kind of catches Andy's attention, and he starts to get really suspicious. And then you have
Cochran walks out with the doll
in hand.
Yep.
Facing out towards the schoolyard.
And I love that shot because it's like they're all the students are all lined up, and Shelton is like yelling demands and commands, and they're doing the whole movements with the gun. And then he pulls Andy aside for some reason. And so we get this shot where Andy's in the foreground, and then in the far background, like blurred in the background, you see a figure walking, and then he sees the doll.
And it's just, he's immediately horrified.
Yeah. He like drops his rifle.
Can't distract. You've got like the corner sort of in the background, and then it kind of, Barkley, and it cuts into, reality again. And it's like, oh, that's bad. Because, from his perspective, his nightmare has yet again caught up with him.
It's 8 years later. He's moved across the country. How could this be happening?
Yeah.
How could he have been found?
Yeah. This is a scene that I love. The Colonel throws him away.
Yeah.
Into a dumpster. And
that dumpster is immediately
like loaded into the
dump truck.
Like the garbage man throws it in there or whatever. And he gets into the thing and he starts the machinery. And then Chucky doesn't do the chameleon voice. It's just, it sounds so earnest. Which by the way, again, poor fucking Chucky. He gets mailed across the country and is immediately picked up and thrown in the garbage. So poor fucking Chucky.
Yeah.
But he's like screaming. He's like, please, sir, please save me. I'm going to get fucking crushed.
And the garbage truck driver, like, he
panics.
He panics because he's just hearing a human voice come out of the back of his truck. And it's like, I mean, that's got to be the worst thing that could happen to a person.
I think the worst thing that could happen to somebody who operates a baler is somebody accidentally gets stuck in the baler.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he goes to rescue Chucky from the baler.
Who then shimmies on out of there and starts the truck and starts the it almost reminds me of the spiked walls in Army of Darkness down in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
But
with the pit bitch.
Yeah. And so that guy gets his arm crushed.
Really brutal.
Yeah. Like
a lot of off camera, but it's still it's
the way that it's shot. And like,
the sound of
it's like they show, his panicked face and then the outside and then the piston of the door closing and then back to his arm. And then it's cut very well.
Yeah. No imagination required. It's pretty brutal. But then he begins to scream. And so everybody out in the yard goes to investigate. And Andy's like, if there was even a second of doubt that is Chucky, now immediately somebody is screaming and you can see it in Andy's face. Again, this kid is a great facial performer of immediately like, nope, that's fucking Chucky.
Yeah.
There's no way it isn't.
And then he has to try and figure out like, well, what is he going to do? But also, who can he explain this to?
Right.
No one has believed him yet, and they're not going to believe him now. That night, we are in their room, and they being Andy and Whitehurst.
Mm-hmm.
And Whitehurst is having to like spit shine Shelton's shoes.
Yeah.
And it's when Andy tries to breach that subject with him of like, hey, did you see Cochran with that doll earlier today? What? No, I didn't. Yeah, it was a good guy doll. And it's building the universe a bit of Whitehurst thinks for a second. He's like, oh yeah, good guys. I do remember those because they haven't been on the market for the last 8 years.
Right.
But if you were a kid at the time that they were popular, you would remember that.
Yeah. If I mention the word Furby right now, most of our audience knows what I'm talking about.
That's the perfect example of that.
And also that those things were fucking creepy and got haunted all the time.
That they did. Chucky is hiding in like Andy's what is that called? A chest of, I don't know.
Like a footlocker.
Yeah, footlocker. Thank you.
And he knows where Andy's room is.
Mm-hmm.
He knows everything. Chucky in this movie is, well, and I appreciate it.
What, did he read the script?
I think it's funny that they circumvent the storytelling and just fuck it. He just knows. But I also appreciate it because it's not important how he knows. No. He just gets there. Mm-hmm. And I don't hate that in this movie.
Yeah. This is the first kind of example of, so there are some setups and payoffs in this movie. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's as many. What I found more interesting is following where the pocket knife goes.
Yes.
And how it goes from person to person to person throughout this whole film. Mm-hmm. So you see Andy is like unpacking his stuff. Whitehurst leaves to go shower or whatever. And Andy lays his pocket knife up on the desk. He also sets out a picture of Andy, Alex Vincent, and his mother, Catherine Hicks.
Who is, of course, rotting in an asylum.
Right.
Like she deserves.
And we get some POV shots of Chucky kind of moving around the room. He picks up the knife. He's crawling under the bed, and he like cuts Andy's his ankle. Mm-hmm. But then, and because Andy has a big reaction to it, skitters across the room and like sees Chucky, and there's a whole. But then he's never limping through the rest of the movie. There's any indication that he was actually cut or hurt or anything.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because you don't want your lead actor to limp the entire movie, or maybe it's just he's toying with him and he doesn't really hurt him too terribly.
True.
But then this is my favorite setup for the puppet for the entire movie. It's him sitting on the fucking bunk. And he's like posed so confidently, like because Chucky's just straight up being an asshole at this point. He doesn't need to see Andy at all. No reason to go in that room.
He's got a whole other kid
new lease on life.
Yeah,
he's just being an asshole. I love it.
And it's just that thing of like, he knows that this will get at Andy.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's just there, I'm still going to kill you, but I don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
And in the commotion, Shelton comes in, I guess, to get his shoes. And he finds Andy is like beating Chucky against the ground at that point.
Which, again, poor fucking Chucky.
And we play a little bit with that, like Carly had said, the toxic masculinity, where Shelton he says some line about like, oh, are you homesick? Oh, what are you doing with this doll? And and he takes it and it's like, well, give me the doll back. And it's like, I think my sister, she'd like it. She's got a birthday coming up. And he takes Chucky away.
Now, what I will say really quick before we move completely away from the scene is that Chucky getting his ass kicked by Andy in the room, he does deserve. And I'll explain why. He says, in reference to taking over Tyler's body, is that Chucky's going to be a bro, is what he says.
It's a really weird
in reference
line.
to becoming a black person, because Tyler is a little black kid.
Yeah.
And I find it strange to reference. Even in the 90s, I find that a strange reference, a little odd, for a white doll voiced by a white guy who in the first movie was shown to be a white man speaking to a white child saying, I'm going to be a bro, is a little strange. But then Andy immediately is like, hey, that's racist. And he beats him up. And frankly, that's the subtext that I took from it.
That's good. And that we should do more of that.
Yeah.
Punching racists, I mean.
And smashing good guy dolls.
Yeah, any that I see. Andy is then he sneaks into Shelton's room to try and get Chucky back. And Shelton has a display on the wall of all sorts of like knives and daggers and swords and things. And there's this giant dagger that's clearly missing.
Like a Bowie knife. Yeah.
And
which becomes the funniest fucking thing is seeing the little Chucky run around with this. Even in my hand, it would be huge. So for Chucky, it's like he's holding a knife the size of his torso the rest of the fucking movie. And it's so funny.
Yeah. They tussle a bit there, waking Shelton up, which then brings a bunch of other, students in to be like, what is going on? It's some of that, though, is Shelton's reaction to Andy being in his room is the funniest thing to me. And I don't know why. It's just something about his delivery. Like I said, it's weird. Because of that, everyone is punished. They're forced outside to walk around like in the rain and just do laps in the courtyard there.
Because Shelton is trying to figure out who stole his knife. Who
stole the doll?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, because he's like, you took the doll, didn't you?
Okay,
because he wasn't like in his.
Because I remember him specifically saying to Cochran about it being to root out a thief. I just assumed it was because of the knife.
Yeah,
but no, he cares apparently about somebody stealing the doll he stole.
Yeah.
Again, I fucking hate this character so much.
He is awful. We get Andy trying to convince Whitehurst there about Chucky. Because Whitehurst is like, well, what was that all about? It's like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And it's like, no, please. Doesn't believe him. But we then move over to the doll's POV going into Tyler's bedroom. And there's a note that Tyler has left for Charles, his friend. And I love that because much like the shot from Child's Play 2, where you see his POV run across the street up to the front door and the hand comes up to the handle, it's the same thing. Like we walk in, the door pushes open, we walk into the room, up to the bed. We see the note laid on the pillow, but it's underneath the covers. And so he reaches up and grabs the blanket and pulls it away. And we've already raved about like the lips and how they match so well with the words that are being spoken. Yeah. But it's that and the hands. I think the puppetry there is so much more advanced than it was in 2.
Definitely. Yeah.
The way you see it grab certain things throughout this film and like pick it up, and
like it doesn't look human, but it looks alive.
Yes.
Which is good.
Like you see the like individual fingers like wrap around things. It's not just like a simple, single motion. Tyler's playing hide and seek with Chucky, and they end up in Cochran's office, again hiding in a closet.
Oh, okay.
So this is another closet reference that I saw. De Silva and her friend Ivers, I believe is the character's name, are sneaking around. They go into Cochran's office as well. They're trying to find Andy's file.
Right.
Because De Silva has a bit of a crush on Andy, and so she's trying to figure out some stuff about him. They find Tyler and Chucky in said closet, and they immediately begin playing with the Chucky doll, and De Silva takes out her lipstick and like
covers his face in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, I don't know if that's purposefully done.
Yeah.
Of like, we've pulled this kid and this doll out of the closet. We're going to immediately paint his face with lipstick. It's demasculating Chucky in a way.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. And he doesn't reveal himself to her.
Which he could, because he's assumedly still has a knife somewhere.
Yeah.
That would have been a better movie if he just immediately won and killed everybody in the military school. That would have been better.
Yeah. Oh man. He starts killing people outright, not hiding that he's a doll or anything. And then they're just using like live ammunition on him. And like, it's a whole like battle against Chucky.
Yeah. It's like Rambo.
Yeah.
But Chucky.
That's what we needed.
Yeah. Chunky 2, New Blood. Or the First Blood or whatever. I don't know.
They, I don't know. They leave and Cochran comes in and then finds the Chucky doll behind his desk because they like hear a sound and run out very quickly.
This is the funniest shit that this movie does, because I've seen so many of these fucking movies at this point. This is the only time I've ever seen this done, where Chucky reveals himself to Cochran because he's about to murder him. And the fright of that scares him so much that he has a fucking heart attack and dies. And it cuts to Chucky, and Chucky's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And he looks so upset because he doesn't get to kill him. He has to watch him die, but he doesn't get to kill him.
Yeah, I don't even think there's like a laugh or anything.
No,
like,
he's like, what the fuck?
Truly disappointed.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It is.
The Cochran smashes like a weird display of like Confederate war. It's weird.
It's like a miniature diorama of a battle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool like stunt to have him fall back into that and shatter this whole table and everything.
Yeah.
We cut to the next day. We are at in the mess hall, and Botnick makes another appearance, and he walks from like person to person and just like grabs people's hair, and he's like, "How long is the last time that you had a haircut?"
Yeah, I'll see you on Wednesday. And he starts like giving people appointments to come back and see him. But again, it's like he's like weirdly running his fingers through the hair. I don't know. That's what a weird character.
It's whenever he runs it over Andy's, because he tells Whitehurst, he's like, I want to see you right after breakfast or whatever.
Right.
And then he runs it over like the flat top of Andy's hair, and he's like, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, this movie takes place over the course of like 3 days maximum.
Right. So how many haircuts has Andy gotten?
Yeah, it's like he just cut his hair yesterday.
It's because that guy was fully up. So he wanted to stay that way, you know. Sex creep.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Andy talks to Tyler in that scene, tries to convince him that, you know, Chucky's a bad guy. He's going to do something bad to him. And he gives him the pocket knife. Andy gives that to Tyler just to keep track of where that is. We then follow Whitehurst to his haircut with Botnick. And this is where, like you had mentioned before, Chucky ends up being in the cabinet.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And he picks up the Chucky doll, and it's so funny because he's like, hey, little guy, when's the last time you had your hair cut? And he like sits him in the chair, and it's like he's getting off cutting Chucky's hair.
Yeah.
And it's like, who wrote this character?
Don Mancini.
Well, okay. Don, reach out to us.
Yeah.
Explain to us why you wrote this.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
That's the character I want to know the most about.
Yeah. Yeah. Of all fucking what is it? 3, 4, 5, 6, all 7 major films that you wrote for this character. That's the weirdest part.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. I kind of gave it away earlier, but the barber has his throat slashed by Chucky.
Yeah.
In what is a bad throat slashing effect to me.
Yeah, the prosthetic there, it doesn't look great.
No, it doesn't.
It's
He doesn't sell it very well either.
No. And I don't know which it is. Because we've seen those sorts of things even in just the movies that we've discussed.
Well, I mean, we've even seen like the throat slash motion, no blood at all, and then it cuts away to something else. But the shock or surprise or the acting of reaction to that getting your throat slashed has sold it just fine.
Right.
But I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah. I don't know. Not great.
You could have just taken this character, lifted it completely out of the movie, and you would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a strange inclusion.
Yeah.
Basically the only thing it gets there is Chucky is standing there laughing about what he's just done when Whitehurst comes back in because he had forgotten his hat after his haircut. And so he sees Chucky standing on his own, laughing.
The barber is dead.
Barber's dead. And
like he deserves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Chucky, he's caught Chucky in the act. So whenever he gets back outside, everybody else is now suited up, ready for the war games. The war games have been mentioned once before, maybe twice before in this film. In the scene where Cochran goes into the armory, when Tyler and Chucky meet for the first time, he and the other like general or whatever, they're talking about like paint pellets.
And if you think this is the obvious next part and the obvious conclusion of this movie, you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah, truly. It does feel like it should be. And then we just
because it's called the war games and you're in a military school. So you think this would be the end. And there are things that happen like, okay, so very, very long story sequence kind of shorthanded because the long sequence is long and for no reason. It kind of rambles a bit in my mind. It doesn't need to be this long. It meanders. And I think it's just the same thing as The Barber. I think that this movie suffered from not enough plot and not enough depth of padding.
Yeah.
But very basically, and I don't know if this is supposed to be a cut scene, like a flashback, or if he's doing it at the time. It's the spacing of this is strange when it shows Chucky in the armory.
Yes.
My assumption is it's a flashback. But why would he know that that's happening?
It is confusing. So yeah, the timing of all this is weird because all the students are out in the courtyard. They're all
getting ready to basically go hiking out into the wilderness,
and they're going to play capture the flag. But they have like paint.
They look like M16s. They look like guns, or I don't know guns, but they look like guns.
But they look like rifles,
and the bullets look like bullets, but with lipstick at the end. Basically, it's supposed to be these are paint guns,
right? And whether that's a real thing or not, I don't know. But as that description of the games and the paint pellets and everything is going on,
it's like cutting back to Chucky in the armory.
In the armory because he's watching out through the window,
right? Laughing.
But then we cut to him fully in there and he starts swapping out the paint pellets for actual bullets.
One thing I will say is that the idea that Chucky takes a paintball game and turns it into live ammunition is hilarious.
Yes.
I don't know how realistic it is that a real gun would fire paint pellets.
I was trying to think of that too. I mean, if it's still like...
Because if it can fire a round, like an actual bullet...
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be able to fire a paint pellet with that velocity. And even if it could, I feel like that would still be really dangerous. Again, not important to the plot, but the timing of it is just weird.
Because then they immediately leave. And so it's like, well, did they already have the guns when they were standing out there? Or did they go into the armory after this and get the guns?
And if this is a flashback, why would Chucky know to do this?
Yeah.
And maybe none of this matters, but it's just like, I know this series to be very meticulous about why things happen and how Chucky knows to do them. So this one's a little strange that they just kind of throw all that out the window. But again, like we said in the very beginning of this discussion, 9 months.
Yeah.
So that's what I attribute that to. I'm almost willing to give it more of a pass than I was at the beginning of our conversation. But yeah, so basically the big reveal right, is they're playing the war game. They're camped out. They're whatever.
It's like capture the flag.
Yeah. Andy and De Silva sneak away to, smooch each other on their, weird age discrepancy mouths. It's weird. Their relationship is weird because she looks like a grown woman and he looks like a teenager.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
that aside, basically the war game is there's walkie-talkies and it sort of begins.
Yeah.
And it's confusing and the geography of it is confusing. We don't know how far away from the academy they have gone. We don't know how far in the woods they are. But one of the important parts of De Silva and Andy's little rendezvous is she points to, in the distance, the lights of a carnival for some fucking reason.
Yeah. It does seem, because again, I forgot so much about this from my first watch. So seeing that scene again, it was like, okay, there's a carnival in the distance.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Not realizing that's our big finish here.
Right.
Guys.
That is the of all the visuals you're getting right now, that's the only one that's important. And it's Chekhov's carnival. But
yeah.
So
Andy is on the blue team and Tyler is on the red team, and Andy is trying to save Tyler from Chucky.
Right. And there is a walkie-talkie involved, and Chucky is kind of taunting him.
Yeah.
And
Andy goes off to try, and he steals a map. He goes to find red team so he can save Tyler. But in doing so, Shelton, who's in charge of blue team, is like, oh, he's backstabbing us, so we got to go catch him. And through all of that, they separate to spread out through the woods, and De Silva gets taken hostage by Chucky.
which, sure. Yeah, she's a grown woman and he's a doll.
Yeah.
But
I guess before that, Tyler and Chucky are off, and Tyler finally realizes, like, oh, yeah, Andy was right. You are trying to do something bad. You're threatening me with this giant dagger. We're playing hide the soul. And then he stabs Chucky with the pocket knife. Gets away. Then Chucky jumps down on De Silva.
And that stab reveals that once again,
Yes.
Chucky is becoming a person.
Yes, because he does bleed. Once he has De Silva, he's holding her hostage with a grenade.
Yeah.
And he radios blue team first and says, like, hey, we're up here at the old Jeep.
And none of the people involved think, well, who is that man from Chicago? We're all children. Who is this grown man's voice from Chicago?
Don't think about it.
Okay, I won't.
Don't ask too many questions.
I'll stop.
They go to check that out. And then he radios red team and says, hey, I'm on your side. And I noticed that the blue team are moving toward the old Jeep. You should go ambush.
It's big conflict. Shelton steps out in between the conflict. And he starts being an asshole. And then the red team opens fire.
Yeah.
But remember, they have actual bullets. So in the best sequence of the entire film, Shelton eats a bunch of fucking lead and dies.
Now, here's the thing. I really hate Shelton as a character.
Yeah, me too.
Him getting shot, the like squib work is incredible.
Well, and he sells it pretty well.
And he sells it so well.
So the thing that sucks is that nobody else reacts, and to me, how you think they would. It's like there's some gasps and whatnot, but like he gets, like, the gun goes off and it's immediately, he's like, there's like it shows blood leave his back. Like there's an exit wound. People would be fucking screaming. And they also, by the way, the other team would stop shooting, but that does not happen.
No, they keep firing for a bit. And then they finally like, hold fire.
Yeah.
Realize what's happened. Got to call a medic. And then Chucky,
reveals himself.
well, he's revealed himself at that point. He throws the grenade at the group of all of them.
Yeah.
And Whitehurst throws himself on this grenade. And again, just sells it.
Yeah.
Like it is. And it's this, both of those kills in the middle of all of this, like kind of lunacy of this movie, oddly stick out to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think both those deaths are great.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's great for two reasons. I think it probably sticks out because they're acted and sold well, and there's real stakes at that point. But the other thing is that up until this point, we haven't really had a lot of that.
Yeah.
A guy gets crushed in a garbage disposal. A guy has a fucking heart attack. He strangles the CEO in the very beginning. But like, you don't get really any. And then there's a terrible throat slash. These are interesting. These are the first kills of this movie that like, oh no, this is deserved. Like, this is good. There are reasons that these things happened. It's not just, I mean, it's been 30 fucking minutes. We got to kill somebody, you know?
Yeah, true.
And then the wheels of the movie come off. And it goes plunging into an ice cold river because it just gets crazier. Because for Act 3, they thought, fuck the military school. Now let's go to the circus.
Yeah. Tyler gets away from Chucky. He runs to the nearby carnival. Truly, like the opening scene with Sullivan in his office and the closing scene of them at the carnival feel like two
completely different movies
from the whole middle of this film.
And I'm going to cut ahead for a second. The credits rolling at the end of this movie and it being the carnival and all of the lights are shutting off because there's like police there because there's been a fucking series of murders surrounding and hostages have been put into the fucking carnival. It's like, you could not have told me, hey, by the way, this movie about the military academy, it ends in a fun house. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. No, it doesn't. But it does because Don Mancini is a psychopath.
Yeah. Tyler, he sees a security guard. He goes to the security tent there trying to get help from, someone who hopefully should be able to. And Chucky has somehow already ended up there.
That scene reminds me of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Okay.
With the security guard. It's like, it's the dream sequence of the hospital in homage to the original Halloween 2. And it's like pouring rain and Laurie's trying to escape and goes to the security tent. And there's like the old man who's like, I got you with the mustache.
Yeah.
And then Michael fucking tears him apart. That reminded, I don't know why. It was just something about like the security booth. It reminded me of that.
Yeah. And then Andy and De Silva show up to find the security guard has been shot in the head.
Yeah.
Because they have this little scene where he like goes to give Tyler some gum and he pulls open the drawer and there's a little gun in there.
Yeah. What I will say is we mentioned this during the Scream 6 review where Ghostface typically uses knives, but in Scream 6 fucking rails go off and he's got, the shotgun, but he has been seen to use a gun. But like Chucky up to this point has been like hammers, knives, typically your typical tools, a yardstick at one point. Best kill in the franchise so far. But here, in this one, it's fucking guns and grenades and shit. And it's like, well, what the fuck is he going to do next?
Yeah. This is the first film in the series that Chucky in doll form uses a gun.
Yeah.
He used a squirt gun in Child's Play 2.
I don't know that counts in any way.
That's fine. Okay. After Andy and De Silva find the security guard, before they leave, De Silva takes the gun.
Yeah.
Now, like the security guard's revolver. Now, let me point out a scene that we didn't talk about earlier, but it does play into kind of like in Child's Play 2, where Andy has that moment with Kyle, and she tells him like, you can only rely on yourself. Here's the lesson that you should learn in this movie. And then by the end of it, he has that moment where he has to rely on himself. And that's the lesson that he learns in the movie. Same thing kind of happens here, is that earlier in the film, when I believe it's when Tyler and Chucky are interacting in the armory, we cut to De Silva and Andy are at the shooting range. They're all at the shooting range.
Right.
And Andy is terrible.
Yes.
And De Silva is amazing.
And she like flirts with him and she's like, you got to move your shoulder. I don't know. She sounds like that too.
Yeah.
Like, she sounds like me.
Right.
It's me.
Yeah. Sexy.
Yeah.
But she shows him how to, line up a shot and fire the rifle and things like that. And so we're going to get a payoff for that in a bit.
Which I think plays along with the toxic masculinity thing because all the bad characters in this movie, like the morally either ambiguous or morally corrupt characters in the movie are, very like boys can't play with dolls. They call her, Sheldon at one point, she calls him an asshole. And then it's like, now you women seem to think that, and goes on this like woman hatey kind of like meninist monologue.
Yeah.
But then, they are our protagonists, and she is the one that knows how to handle herself, and he learns from her how to do that in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a theme that's through all of these first three films is like I said, with Kyle, he follows this lesson that he's learning from this woman in his life. He, in Child's Play 1, he's raised by a single mother.
Yeah.
Like, I think all of that thematically kind of plays, where Andy, looks to the women in his life for advice, and he follows that advice.
Yeah.
So they now have this revolver. They leave the security tent, and they see that Tyler and Chucky go into the Devil's Lair, which is like a haunted house ride at this carnival.
Yeah. Chucky sees it and he's like, fitting.
And when they go in there, I have to point out that immediately I was terrified because there's a spooky skeleton that pops out.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Then you had a heart attack and fucking died. You smashed into a glass case, and I was super upset because I was going to kill you by strangulation. Like the good old days.
They go in, and you've been to a carnival before. Yeah. A county fair.
Sure, yeah.
You've probably been through like a haunted house ride at one of those things.
And you know what that haunted house ride isn't? Giant.
Yeah.
It's not huge.
It's not the size of the Haunted Mansion at Disney World.
It's like the Haunted Mansion and Space Mountain.
Yeah.
It's like huge.
Because it had like, you have a first room that we see, which is like in a graveyard. And then you move to a secondary room that takes place in hell.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Like the geography of the location reminded me of Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin.
Okay.
How like you've got the track, but then off the track, it's like these big scenes that go deep and like they're big.
Yeah.
And that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. No, that's a good pull.
Weird. Because you see the building from the outside and you're like, there's no fucking way.
No.
We talked about, I don't remember what movie we were talking about on this show, but we mentioned that there's like, I called it the cobweb effect.
Right.
How the bigger, like this house, you see it from the outside and then you go inside and it's huge. This is so much worse. This is like the worst example of that.
Yeah. There's no way this could possibly exist.
That carnival spent $45 million on this ride.
Yeah. But they can throw it up in a day.
Yeah, great.
So they're in the graveyard scene. Tyler, gets away from Chucky. He's hiding. Andy and De Silva come in, and De Silva starts blasting. No, Chucky. What is that? 4 for?
Oh shit! Yeah, Sunny reference.
Sunny reference.
It's always Chucky and Sunny Dolphia.
Beautiful. Jeff's kiss. So Chucky shoots De Silva in the leg, and so that kind of puts her out for the rest of this.
Yeah.
And they end up going into the secondary room where, like I said, it looks like hell. It's all fiery.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the first room looked like a dark ride, if you know theme park terms. And then the second room is more of like a roller coaster.
Right.
And you have parts where Tyler is crawling back and forth across the tracks as the little cars are going by. And then Andy does a similar thing later, like climbing around and like hanging from them like a gymnast.
Well, and all of this basically leads to the final confrontation, which is like over like a giant fake volcano.
Yeah, it's like so there's a giant like mountain made of these skulls.
Right.
That Andy is climbing, but that's because Tyler rides like one of the animatronics of like a flying demon or something up to the top, and you have Chucky hanging on to the bottom. Yeah. And it's an animatronic for Chucky that's just like his whole movement is just to kick his legs.
Which is great.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
But
he's
they make
a little guy. It's important to note here that after all this time, Chucky's still just a little guy.
That he is. And so Andy's trying to get up to the top before Chucky can do the chant and do the whole thing. So he's having to scale this mountain made of skulls. It looks like the Astro Crag from Nickelodeon's Guts. I don't know if that's a reference you get at all. Anyway,
and I heard the clunk in my brain of trying to rack, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, Mike O'Malley was there. He was looking like a real piece of shit. Chucky. Oh, the coolest thing about this entire sequence is that Chucky's face, half of his face, gets chopped off.
Yeah, there's it's
by
like
a giant Grim Reaper.
It's like a Grim Reaper, like again, Haunted Mansion, just like a A/B action animatronic, and it slices his face off. And I love it because the internal mechanisms of Chucky's face, it's like midway between, because there are points in the series where he's fully human and like has a heart and gets shot and bleeds and shit. But this is like, it's like metal animatronic workings covered in meat.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
And I don't know if like what we're seeing on that side of his face, is that supposed to be the inner workings of the good guy Chucky doll or of the animatronic that he is?
Well, I think it's both.
Like,
I think in this world you can just say that the doll is advanced enough that it looks a bit like that. But it is so fucking cool looking.
Yeah.
It's like the reverse opposite of the Phantom of the Opera mask.
Yeah.
And it's like
He looks like Two-Face.
I love the reaction shot of the floppy face skin spiraling through the air. That's so fucking funny.
Yes. I love, but also,
which by the way, poor fucking Chucky, dude.
There's about to be some poor Chucky in a second.
Yeah, it's the funniest fucking looking thing in the world.
At the top of this mountain, they're over, like you said, kind of volcanoes.
And it's the size of a mountain, by the way. Yeah.
They're over these like fake volcanoes that are in there. There are these giant wind turbines
with zero safety.
There's no like mesh over the top of it.
Now, I'll be honest, that is indicative of a carnival. That feels like a carnival.
Yes. That's, when you put it that way, yes. Yeah. Andy has taken the gun from De Silva, and so he like lines up a shot and he fires, misses wildly, and then he like focuses and like uses the lesson that De Silva told him earlier to shoot.
The force. He gets the laser down the ventilation shaft.
He pretty much. He blows Chucky's arm off, and then he shoots him in the chest, and he falls back, climbs up, saving Tyler. Chucky hops on his back. There's a big struggle. Tyler almost falls into the turbine down there. And
turbine's a good word. It is like a jet turbine.
Well, the reason I say turbine is because in the credits, at the very end of the credits, there's like a thank you from a turbine company.
What the fuck?
So it really stuck out to me. There's another credit that really stuck out to me, and I'll point that out in a second.
Okay.
But this is where Tyler then hands Andy back up the pocket knife.
Right.
And Andy uses it to cut off Chucky's other hand and then flip him off of his back, where Chucky just...
It's very clearly a doll again, not an animatronic of any kind. It's clearly just a doll who floppily crashes into the turbine, and they have then clearly filled the doll with a bunch of red paint and pieces of meat because it fucking explodes. It turns into pink mist.
Yeah.
And it's so poor fucking Chucky, dude. Keep in mind in this series, listener at home or in your car, I don't know your fucking life, but consider the fact that so far in this franchise, Chucky has been shot many times. He has lost every limb multiple times. He has been burnt to a crisp. He has been exploded. He has been, everything that could possibly happen to you, but then things that couldn't happen to you. Like he's had extra body parts, like almost shoved onto him. He has been melted into a puddle. He has been inflated like a tire and exploded. And now he gets thrown by a piece of shit kid in a carnival into a jet turbine and is turned into basically like bran flakes. It's it looks great.
Oh, it's amazing looking.
Yeah,
he is obliterated.
But I think we should start the hashtag poor Chucky. Because that poor fucking, this shit doesn't happen to fucking Michael.
No.
Michael gets shot a couple times. Oh, he gets struck by lightning at one point. But it's, you know, like Jason, he gets hit in the head with a machete or whatever. But like, poor Chucky, dude.
Yeah.
He's just a little guy.
It's a wild end for this character, but I am so happy that it happens because it is like the coolest thing in the whole movie.
And then for years we go, oh, well, I guess that's how Chucky died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Andy and De Silva, they meet up afterwards. De Silva's being taken away by an ambulance.
Yeah.
And then the cops show up for Andy and are just like, you got to come with us. And like Andy's last line there is something like, don't worry, I've been here before. And then they drive away and I always think like watching it, they tilt up on this guy who is cleaning up the fairground, the carnival grounds there. And he's like using one of those sticks with the poker to pick up trash.
Uh-huh.
And they like tilt up on him. And I always think like, well, he's going to like pick up a piece of Chucky or something. And it's like, no, there's nothing. The camera just like cranes up out of the carnival. All the lights are shutting off around it. And then credits begin rolling. It is much like Child's Play 2. No time wasted.
No time wasted. No hint of a sequel.
No.
And this one that actually ends up playing off for a very long time.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that then the reveal in Bride of Chucky, what makes the sequel is impossible. And we'll get into that. We'll get into that next week, but it's fucking impossible. I have never been more shocked by where the credits begin to roll in a film before. It's like, don't worry, I've been here before. And the cops, the cars pull away and it's like, oh, the movie's over.
Yeah, we're just done.
Like, oh, it's done. We're not going to worry about what happens to Andy. We're not going to worry about what happens specifically to Tyler, the kid who's been trying to be saved the whole movie. De Silva and he start a relationship just to get pulled apart, but that doesn't matter narratively. And it's like, oh no, the movie's just done now.
Yeah, we've told the story that I guess we needed to tell and we are done now.
It is weird.
Yeah.
It's not bad because by that point, so many what the fuckisms have happened where it's just like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, I don't care.
Yep.
End the movie. That's fine. Fine by me.
In the credits, the interesting credit that I will point out is that the stunt coordinator on this film is Dick Warlock.
Dick Warlock.
Which, besides having the greatest name that a human being could have,
yeah,
he played Michael Myers in Halloween 2.
He did. What I will say about Dick Warlock, and I mentioned this to you in our rewatch, this job had to have been an easy fucking paycheck.
Yeah.
Okay, Dick, what do we do for this stunt? Throw the doll. Dick, what do we do for this stunt? Throw him again, harder. Okay, well, what about this one? The doll stabs him. Then what? Throw him. Where? Into the turbine. Dick, no. Do you have any idea how much money it's going to cost for a fucking jet engine turbine to be in a haunted house? Rent a haunted house the size of a mansion. I need a place to sleep. I don't know why Dick Warlock talks like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You know why.
Because he's the Dick Warlock.
I just seeing that name in the credits, I was like astounded. Yeah. This is it's a strange little movie.
It is. It's not a strange movie, man, because that sounds like, aw, this is a weird like, and again, I've said it twice now, I'll say it a third time. I probably say more than that, but finding out that the time constraint was such a big factor of this movie explains a lot of its weird, like little hangups, a lot of the weirdness of it. But my God, it is weird. The choices that are made, the setting, the pacing, the theme, the ending, it's all weird. The only not weird part is the very beginning. And even that is like, why are we watching this guy in the elevator for so fucking long? Like there's weird parts in the beginning too.
Yeah, it's the that opening scene is the closest we get to it feeling like the first two films.
It feeling like a Child's Play movie.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it just feels like it feels like a fucking teenager military academy movie with Chucky in it.
And then we go to a carnival. And
Our lives have become the carnival.
is that where we've hit that point now?
Yeah. Speaking of carnivals, would you recommend this fucking funhouse to anybody?
I would recommend it in the way of like, if you don't want to think about anything and you just want some dumb fun with some good animatronics and some good one-liners from a Chicagoan doll.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Okay.
Or if you're an absolute completist for the Child's Play Chucky films.
You stan a Chucky?
Yeah. I don't think it is as bad as I remember it.
Yeah.
It is not. And I think this is one of those movies, like, it didn't do well when it first came out. Didn't light up the world, but it has kind of, in the years past, I think, kind of gotten a second lease on life.
Sure.
I think a lot of movies, especially with the current generation discovering it later, that's happened a lot of.
And streaming makes that easier. And Tubi sponsors, please God. But yeah, no, so unfortunately, with Child's Play 3, we've come to the first movie since we've started the recommendation process at the end of our episodes. I do not recommend this movie. It is weird and fun for us because we are a special kind of moron who enjoys stuff like this.
Yeah.
But I would say to your average film goer, I don't recommend Child's Play 3. I think that if you skip from Child's Play 2 to Bride of Chucky, perfectly fine. I don't think you need this one. I think this one is... I have problems with and they're not huge problems, but they are problems with almost everything that makes a movie with this. We've celebrated the good in this discussion, but that does not ignore the fact that everything about this movie, I feel like, was done different than how it should have been done. Except the casting. Casting's fine. Don't have a problem with that. But like, even like the score you lose a lot of what makes the Child's Play score interesting, even from the movie before it.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. Not a huge fan. I don't recommend this one. Just watch Bride. If I'm just saying watch Bride, don't watch the first two either. Don't watch anything else after. Just watch Bride of Chucky.
Yeah, just watch Bride of Chucky.
That's what the tagline of our poster is. Third Channel Podcast, just watch Bride of Chucky. Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel Podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at thatdrosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial. Egg salad and eggs.